A dog barked at strangers on a rainy street, and in that moment, he set off a chain of events that exposed betrayal, uncovered a hidden promise, and changed 3 lives forever. The rain was relentless that day, drumming against rooftops and soaking the streets in a gray wash of misery. A mother and her young son stood shivering outside their former home, their belongings tossed onto the wet sidewalk like trash. The landlord, red-faced and shouting, showed no mercy as he slammed the door shut behind them. Nearby, a pickup truck rumbled down the street, its driver, a former army sergeant named Mark, focused solely on finishing his supply run and returning to the quiet isolation of his forest cabin. But in the passenger seat, Ranger, his German Shepherd service dog with a rare silver-white coat and eyes sharp as memory itself, began to stir. At first, it was a low whine, then restless shifting, then a bark. Not his usual quiet warning, but something deeper, more urgent. Mark glanced at him, startled. Ranger's gaze was fixed on something outside. Trusting his partner without question, Mark slowed the truck and followed the dog's line of sight. And that's when he saw it. The woman's soaked frame, the boy's downturned face, the weight of injustice soaking into the concrete. Mark didn't hesitate. He slammed the brakes, stepped out into the storm, and walked straight to the landlord. His presence, tall and unyielding, silenced the shouting man. With just one sentence, "That's enough," Mark ended the tirade. Turning to the mother and child, he didn't ask. He ordered, "You're coming with me." And they did. Because in Ranger's bark, Mark had heard more than distress. He'd heard a mission. The cabin was small and dark, built for solitude, not guests. But that night it became a sanctuary. Mark busied himself building a fire, his hands stiff from disuse, his eyes flickering with old instincts. Elena sat quietly, wrapped in unease, while her son Leo sat beside the hearth, wrapped in a blanket and mesmerized by the flickering flames. The silence was deep, awkward, heavy with unspoken questions. Then Ranger stood. His steps were silent across the wooden floor as he approached Elena, not like a curious dog, but like someone recognizing someone. He pressed his wet nose gently against the back of her hand, then did something startling. He placed his chin firmly in her palm and sighed. Not just a dog's sigh, but a gesture of recognition, of comfort, of reunion. Mark froze. This wasn't behavior Ranger showed strangers. This was a trick, a specific personal trick. Mark leaned forward, trying to understand. "Has he met you before?" he asked. Elena shook her head, as confused as he was. "I don't think so." Mark's heart pounded. That gesture, it was familiar. And then, like fog lifting, a memory surfaced. David, his best friend in the army, laughing in the barracks, talking about the trick he'd taught his dog, to rest his chin in someone's hand like a hug. "It's his signature move," David had said. Mark looked from Ranger to Elena and finally to the photo of David on the mantel. "David?" he whispered, the truth crashing over him like thunder. The name hung in the air like smoke. Elena's eyes widened as she looked from Mark to the photo, and then to the dog still pressing into her palm. The recognition broke something inside her. A sob tore from her chest, raw and years in the making. She curled forward, weeping not just for the night's events, but for all the grief she had kept buried. Ranger didn't move. He leaned closer, resting his weight on her lap, letting her cry into his thick, warm fur. In that moment, the dog was not a pet. He was a confessor, a healer, a bridge to the past. Shielded by that comfort, Elena began to speak. Her voice shook as she shared what happened after David died. how the world had turned cold and chaotic, how her cousin Richard had stepped in, claiming he'd manage the finances, the life insurance, the savings. "Let me help," he had said with a comforting smile. But he had taken everything, slowly, quietly, with lies and paperwork she didn't understand. And by the time she realized the truth, it was too late. There was nothing left. No home, no future, just shame. Shame that had silenced her. "I couldn't call his unit," she whispered, her hands buried in Ranger's fur. "I couldn't tell his brothers I failed him." Mark listened, fists clenched, grief merging with fury. This wasn't just Elena's burden. This was a betrayal of David's legacy. A legacy he now had the chance to defend. That night, Mark sat awake by the fire, staring into the flames as memories of David, laughter in the sand, and gunfire under foreign skies returned to him. Ranger lay by his side, alert but calm, as if waiting for Mark's next move. And Mark had won. The next morning, he picked up the phone, not to retreat but to rally. He called his old unit, activated favors long buried, and found a pro bono lawyer named Sarah Jenkins, a Navy vet with a spine of steel and a voice like cut glass. She listened carefully to Elena's story and agreed to take the case. But she had a warning. Without the original contracts, it's just her word against his. Elena paled. The documents were gone, she said, lost in a flood of moves and evictions, scattered like leaves in a storm. Mark didn't accept that. He, Elena, and two veterans drove to the storage unit where her last belongings had been dumped. The scene was bleak. Wet boxes, broken furniture, memories packed in chaos. They searched for hours, hope fading with each empty carton. Just as they were about to give up, Ranger froze. His ears perked. He let out a sharp bark. Not panic, not curiosity, but alert. He placed himself in front of a water-stained box in the corner and stared. Mark, heart racing, opened the box, and inside, beneath baby clothes and photo albums, was a sealed envelope. The contracts, the statements, the proof, every document they thought lost. Ranger didn't wag his tail. He sat calmly as if to say, "Mission complete." The legal battle that followed was short but powerful. With the documents now in hand, Sarah tore through Richard's defense like a soldier clearing enemy lines. The lies unraveled fast. Timeline discrepancies, fake receipts, signatures under scrutiny. The courtroom air turned cold as the truth emerged in full. Elena won. Not just her case, but her dignity. She recovered the majority of David's inheritance and secured a legal order barring Richard from any future access to her or Leo. It wasn't just a financial victory, it was personal redemption. And Ranger? The courtroom's quiet hero. The dog who had delivered justice with a bark and a nose. The story spread quietly through the veteran network, and one by one, Mark's old brothers in arms came forward. Not just with congratulations, but with offers to help. Elena was moved into a new apartment, safe, clean, filled with sunlight. The move-in day felt like a family reunion. Veterans lifting boxes, cracking jokes, turning trauma into laughter. The weight that had lived in Elena's shoulders began to lift, little by little. Leo, for the first time in weeks, ran from room to room, chasing joy. And in every corner, Ranger watched him, protective, proud. Weeks later, Mark visited the apartment. It was early afternoon, and golden light spilled through the windows. Leo's laughter rang out from the living room where he played with Ranger. No longer a stoic guardian, but a joyous companion, letting the boy pull on his ears and climb over him like a jungle gym. Elena emerged from the kitchen, radiant in a way Mark hadn't seen before. She smiled at Ranger. "He's the guest of honor, always," she said softly. Mark stood at the doorway, heart heavy with something unfamiliar. Peace. For so long, he'd believed that honoring David meant carrying his memory like a burden. Alone, in silence, away from the world. But he was wrong. David didn't want silence. He wanted his family safe, his son joyful, his memory honored not with mourning but with movement. Ranger had known. The dog had been more than a companion. He had been the keeper of that promise. The one who had recognized grief behind closed doors. The one who had found the papers. The one who had led Mark back to his mission. As Mark watched Elena Porte and Leo tug at Ranger's tail, he realized something profound. The story hadn't unfolded because of chance. It had unfolded because of loyalty. Because a dog with a memory sharp as war had carried a message across time. Ranger had never forgotten David. He had never stopped serving. From the moment he barked at that rainy sidewalk, he had been on a mission. And Mark? He had just been the hands. The heart and soul had belonged to Ranger. And now that mission was complete. The promise had been fulfilled. The guilt could rest. The past had been honored not with vengeance, but with love. And for the first time in years, Mark felt light. Ranger padded over and sat beside him, nudging his knee. Mark looked down and smiled. "Good job, soldier," he whispered. And Ranger wagged his tail slowly, as if he already knew. A dog's loyalty is a quiet, unshakable thing. It doesn't boast or demand recognition. It acts. It waits. It remembers. Ranger's story is not just about a heroic animal. It's about the sacred bond between those who serve and those who wait, between the silent warriors and the voices they protect. In a world full of noise, it was Ranger's silence that spoke loudest. He guided his veteran back to purpose. He led a broken woman to justice. And he gave a boy a second chance at childhood. His actions remind us that sometimes the bravest among us don't wear medals, they wear fur. And their missions aren't shouted. They're whispered through gestures, through memories, through acts of devotion that most overlook. If you've ever had a companion, human or animal, who led you through the darkness, you know that loyalty like Ranger's is priceless. This story was not about a rescue. It was about a reunion, a circle closed, promise kept, all thanks to a dog who never forgot and never gave up. Some heroes walk on 2 legs, others on 4, but loyalty always finds its way home. If this story touched your heart, share it, subscribe, and stay with us for more powerful tales of love, justice, and redemption.